I had been taught how to tour with the Herd when Keith Moon and John Entwistle decided to take me under their wing. So I learned a few things on that tour that one is supposed to do, I guess, on tours. I don't know. I'm not going into those things. A mutual friend, we were right down the street from the Marquee Club, and he said he worked for George, and he said, "Do you want to come and meet Harry?" So I said, "Harry?" He said, "No, George." So they had code names, you know. I said, "Oh my God, yes, this would be the first Beatle meeting, you know." So went to Trident Studios. So I walked into the control room, and as I walked in, George was behind the console, and it's sort of like an apparition, you know, you see a Beatle, you know. And he goes, "Hello, Pete," you know, and I literally looked behind me, see if Pete Townsend walked in, you know. He said, and that day, he said he was producing his first record for somebody else, first album he'd produced for Apple. And it was Doris Troy, who had sung on Humble Pie as backups. And she wrote the song that the Hollies had a huge hit with called Stay. George said, "Do you want to play?" I said, yes, okay. And he hands me that red Les Paul, the storied Les Paul, and of course I had no idea what it was. He shows me the chords, and we're starting to play a little bit, and I'm playing very quiet rhythm behind him, you know, and not wishing to stand out or overstep my bounds. And he stopped. He said, "No, I play rhythm, you play lead." So I thought, oh, really? So that's when I ended up playing all the licks on this, which ended up being the single. He ended up playing a slide solo on it, but I had all the licks in it, you know, and ain't that cute? It must have been only a few weeks later, he calls me up, you know, and it's weird picking the phone up and there's a Beatle on the other end, you know. "Hello? Are you a Beatle?" He said, "I'm doing a solo album. I'd like you to come and play some acoustic with me." So he said, "We got Phil's producing, and he wants, you know, 3 pianos, 19 acoustics. He does the whole, you know, 2 drummers, the whole thing." So, okay, great. So I'm on acoustic on about 5 or 6 of the more country tracks. After we'd finished those sessions, George called me back up and said, "Guess what? Phil wants more acoustics." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No." So he said, "Would you come down and we'll just sit on 2 stools and we'll..." So we're sitting in front of the glass control room. There's Phil Spector in there. And the 2 of us are just between takes jamming, you know. Probably one of the highlights of my life, you know. I think the reason that George's album was so powerful was the fact that he got all these songs stored up that he wasn't doing with the Beatles. He was in the moment at that time, and every song that I heard for the first time, either recorded, stuff that was recorded before me, or the ones that he was showing us to record, it was all like jaw-dropping stuff. This is beautiful, you know, it's all beautiful stuff. You know, it was George's time to say, "Here I am," you know, finally, you know, which was wonderful. When we lost all our gear in the flood in Nashville in 2010, lost 44 guitars. I mean, everybody lost everything. But I was able, with the insurance, to get their stuff replaced. You know, there's only 2 guitars that I saved, a Hank Marvin Strat, and also that Texan, the 64 Texan. You know, I bought it in 68, secondhand, in London. I needed a good acoustic for Humble Pie. The road crew went out and came back with this from Denmark Street or something. Yeah, and then it became like my only acoustic, you know, like the The SG was my only guitar, you know, only electric. So the first one I wrote that day was, it's a different tuning. Wrote that one, and then that one, and then see, that's the same guitar, and it sounds like it, you know. It's weird. Other guitars just don't sound like that, you know. Yes, and I've been trying to work out how I can have another day like that. I wasn't going to replace everything. I decided that I would just go for choice pieces, and one of the pieces was this 1959 335. And people say, that's not a 59. They didn't make red ones in 59. Well, they did. They were trying to different colors, because up until that point, they were all sunburst, right? So it's a 59. But it's got a 60 neck, which I like smaller necks. I bought that. I bought the 60. I bought those, the Jazzmaster and the Jaguar. And one of them is a 63 and one of them is a 58, I think. The end result I'm looking for is the sound to inspire me to play the best I can in whatever area on a track it's going to be. I don't want, you know, multiples of anything. I just wanted to try and find one of each different type of guitar and one of each different type of amp. Yeah. This is some guitar, let me tell you. And I never kind of understood tellies until I saw Jeff Beck playing with one. I thought, well, it doesn't sound like a telly when he plays it. It's got this other thing, because he rolls the tone all the way off, you know, and gives it that really ballsy sound. Yeah, it's become one of my favorites. Gordon Kennedy, my dearest friend and writing partner for like 1,000 years now, he had one and I always loved it, and he had the slab board. And for me, the tellies with the maple neck were just a little bit too bright. And these have a little bit more warmth to them. And so that's what I was looking for. And I have pictures of the two together, and they're like clones. It's all about sound to me, and inspiration, you know, the feel. And there's something about the soul of old guitars that they did make them good back then. Steve Marriott was playing a duo jet too. He played a lot of Gretches with the Small Faces. I just loved the sound of his, and decided that I would get one. We were recording at Olympic Studios in London, so all the guitars were like, if that's the door, they were all along the wall there in their cases, you know, so that we could go and pick them up. Well, we were in the control room and said, okay, Pete, time for a solo. So opened up the case and it wasn't in there. So we realized someone had come in the studio while we were in the control room. It was a huge room, and had just taken it out of its case and walked off. So the two roadies went straight to the shop in Shepherd's Bush, the music shop, and the guy had just left. So the owner of the store had said, leave it with us and we'll see if we can find a buyer for it. So he hadn't paid for it or anything, you know, and he knew whose it was, you know. My crew went in there and there it is, you know, and took it right back. So I got it back the same day. But that's so wild, isn't it? Yeah. There it is. I was doing the I'm in You album at Electric Lady Studios, and in '77, it was the last day. We'd been there 6 months, you know. It was those days when you wrote in the studio. The manager, or owner, I'm not sure which, had this case, and as I was leaving that day, and he said, I have a present for you. I said, oh, really? He said, this was left here by Jimi Hendrix. And my heart started to beat a little faster. And then he opened it up and this was inside, you know. And he said, I'm sure Jimi would have wanted you to have this. I said, well, if you say so. When I did the Glass Spider tour with David, there was one song he did every now and again that had a choral sitar guitar in it. Said, I've got one. And then we had this sort of Spinal Tap idea. It was a lick that happened twice in the song. And so we thought because it's such a ginormous stage, we'd do a little Spinal Tap. And this would go up into the rafters and come down for me to play it. So I could just put my other guitar behind my back and walk into it. So we did.